the doctor came in the room, and it was Thanksgiving weekend of 2000. And he said, I have some bad news. You have very advanced cancer.
Sometimes there's a certain zest for life that's only gained through suffering. I think sometimes it's sort of amplified when we've come to the other side of suffering.
You can reframe adversity to be a teacher of life. That's what you have to do. It's what you have to do. You're obligated for your vitality, for your livelihood.
I want to pause there because everyone listening is going to need a beat to just digest that piece of the story. And y'all, we're just getting started. We're round one. This is episode 311 of the Brilliant Balance podcast, and my guest today is Dr. Dawn Mussallem, living fully alive after stage 4 cancer and a heart transplant. So, hello and welcome to a really exceptional episode of this show. I want to tell you that when Dr. Lisa Larkin and I wrapped up our podcast interview a little earlier this year, she said to me at the end of the interview off camera, I have to introduce you to someone because I just know that you're going to love her. And that someone was Dr. Dawn Mussallem. And Dawn's professional background is definitely impressive, right? She is a double board certified doctor at the Mayo Clinic. She's a professor of medicine. So she was already someone I wanted to talk to. And then I learned her personal story. And just wait until you hear what this woman has survived personally and how it provides motivation for her work in the arena of lifestyle medicine. Dawn she's just extraordinary. She is a dynamic, energizing, inspiring presence. And I'm so excited to share this interview with you. We just wrapped it up a little bit ago today. And I think you're going to find that her professional credentials and her expertise are really strong. I mean, she's always known she wanted to be a doctor. She was in medical school when her first serious health setback took place. And she unpacks that story. And then the hits just kept coming. The number of personal challenges that she has had to endure in her adult life are really extraordinary. There are not just a lot of them, and there are, but they're all really significant. Some things that would make most people just sort of give up, or accept a far diminished life from the one that they are capable of living, and not her. So you're going to hear the importance of her perspective, her attitude, her spirituality in her story. And then the fact that she turns and sort of wraps all of that lived experience and education up, ties it up in a bow, and offers it as a gift to her patients, to our listeners today, and to the world at large. It's such a treasure when you get to have a conversation with someone who exudes this level of high quality energy. So my one wish is that we were airing this episode in its video format. And I feel certain that I will find a way to air snippets of this video because you really have to see her presence to fully take it in. And I think you'll hear it come through in her voice as well. So without further ado, let me introduce Dr. Dawn Mussallem. So welcome to the Brilliant Balance Show. I am so truly delighted to have you here.
Oh gosh, thank you so much, Shirley. And I was really looking forward to this day. I had another talk earlier this morning to a group of doctors. And though I love that, there is nothing more that I love than to connect with the people. And especially when it's a group. I love the one-on-one. It's time I cherish so much with my patients. I absolutely love it. But when I can speak to a group, it's so exciting.
It's the energy of it is something different, isn't it? It really is. And I know I love kind of imagining before I start these, who's out there, where will they be on the day that they're listening, and how will it land for them when they get to hear our conversation, right? It's always it's such a really sacred opportunity to get to do this. And I'm so grateful I get to have the conversations in person, but then to know that a lot of people can benefit. It's you to kind of put the waves ripple effect out there in the universe. So let's start by, can you just tell us a little bit about your day today? What's on your schedule for this day?
Oh, it's been a kind of an interesting day. So Monday through Thursday, I see patients all day long. So I really dedicate those days to patient care. And I really try not to even put meetings on because I just, like I said, that is, I'll talk about my story, but my patients and kind of that passion and purpose to deliver original medicine through that lens of love for humanity has been part of what has saved my life, I feel, because it's just so special to me. And so that one-on-one time with my patient is just so loving, and that embrace. And I've had some really interesting cases. Like, for example, I had a woman who's 19 years old with breast cancer. I mean, we see some of the sickest cases in the world, and it gives me chills to say that. But there's nothing more special than to be able to be there with her and her family to help them on this journey. So I'm just so truly blessed, and I'm so inspired by my patients and my work. But today, Friday, is usually more my business day. To answer your question, I need to get to the point. And so my morning started off with a presentation for a group of heart failure and transplant cardiologists and nurse practitioners and nurses that I was able to speak with on behalf of Mayo Clinic for a conference. And then I've had meetings leading right up to this. So this is
great.
Exciting.
Do you have some fun? This is a Friday as we're recording this. Do you have some fun things planned in time for yourself heading into the weekend?
Oh, life is fun. Every single thing I do is fun. So so nothing specific. I am excited. Next weekend, I get to go visit my daughter for Parents Weekend in college. So I'm going to kind of prepare a few things for that next weekend and cook some things that I can put in the freezer to take care of.
Yes. I just sent my oldest to college this August. So that is a very shared experience we are having, and a very new one, at least in my case.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I always like to ask this too, like, what's on your heart and mind? Maybe having a daughter in college, but what else is on your heart and mind?
Well, it was so special starting my morning, being able to speak with this group of doctors, a lot about my journey, but just about the fact that I think all of us are in this life journey together. And after going through what I went through, and I know we'll be getting to that, but I mean, it's just so exciting to be here. And I was really looking forward to this kind of winding down my day. I have a few more meetings after this, but this being a special part, just to share that love that I have for humanity. And it's just so authentic. And I really invite others to, develop that love for self. And I think that's really lacking. I see that so much in my patients, and especially in women, and you just had a child go to college. I have a daughter in college, and I hear so much of this empty nest syndrome. And for me, it was really, though I miss her dearly, I stay in touch with her. We're so fortunate with social media. It was more like the soaring eagle. It's like, oh my gosh, like professionally, my life is so easy now because I don't have this guilt that, oh my gosh, I got to get to gymnastics and I got to pick her up. And it's just me. And not that I'm selfish with my time, but it's like, oh, if I just want to have a cabbage and quinoa for dinner,
you can.
No, it's great. It just
only you would pick cabbage and quinoa for dinner. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, Dawn, you have walked quite a path, as I have come to learn, to get to where you are in your life today, right? Personally and professionally. And I think I'm getting to see your face during this interview. People would never guess what you have been through by looking at you, except maybe that sometimes there's a certain zest for life that's only gained through suffering. I think sometimes it's sort of amplified when we've come to the other side of suffering. But I do want to start there, because people could easily see the photo we'll share of you, or, Google you and see this beacon of health and vibrancy, and you are, but that's really been hard earned. And so I want you to take us back to the time when you were in medical school in the fall of 2000 and tell us what happened to you at that time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Cheryl Ann. So I was a very healthy young girl growing up, and my passion was health. I studied in my undergraduate studies, exercise physiology and nutrition, went on to medical school. Few weeks into medical school, wasn't feeling good. Saw a doctor. They said it was asthma, gave me an inhaler, which didn't make sense, right? I was usually a runner, climb mountains, couldn't do it. Use the inhaler, wasn't better. Saw another doctor, getting worse, said, use it more. I'm like, okay.
Oh, gosh.
This is weird, right? And so then saw a third doctor because I was getting worse. I couldn't even walk 10 feet without being short of breath. And that doctor said, it's in your head. And I thought, really? And then I started feeling guilty, right? Because I'm thinking, am I? You start questioning and doubting yourself. Is this possible? Is it stress? This isn't like me. This isn't my personality. I take good care of myself. A few days later, I'm walking home from medical school and I collapse. I was taken to the emergency room and I was in cardiogenic shock. I had a 16 centimeter mass wrapped around my chest, or wrapped around my heart is how I should describe that. And it was compressing my great vessels. And so the blood could not get to the brain properly and go to to the other vital organs. And so they had to take me to urgent surgery. And I remember waking up from that surgery, and there was a young woman who was in my medical school, and she was crying. And I just thought, oh my gosh, this is not a good thing. But I really thought, like, I need to make
right.
It's terrible. Be just fine, because I just had this knowing, like, I'll be okay, whatever it is, I can handle this. So the next day the doctor came in the room, and it was Thanksgiving weekend of 2000. And he said, I have some bad news. You have very advanced cancer. We're basically going to predict that this is a stage 4 diffuse aggressive cancer, and you need to start treatment immediately. There's no time for fertility preservation, which that kind of little hand. I'd already talked about my daughter.
Yeah.
Happened. So you don't have time for fertility preservation. You're never going to have a child. I'm like, okay, thanks for your optimism. You need to quit medical school. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it gives me chills to repeat that, and this was just the on-call team, Thanksgiving weekend. Fortunately, the following Monday, my actual doctor came in the room and was like, I'm going to fight every bit along the way with you if you're ready to fight. So that's what we did. So chemotherapy, because it was stage 4 cancer, I needed a bone marrow transplant. And it was just remarkable during this time. So many people relate chemotherapy to being sick, and it just elevated my existence. It was the biggest gift in the world. If you can reframe adversity to be a teacher of life, that's what you have to do. It's what you have to do. You're obligated for your vitality, for your livelihood. And, I just think that's what we're supposed to try to do in life. And Cheryl, you said something so amazing, that suffering, adversity, hardship, that's part of the human experience.
It is.
It elevates the good times. I can't explain it, but everything I've been through in life is why my existence is just like incredible.
Amplified.
I joke and I say, I wish people could just hop in my body for a moment. So anyways, do this bone marrow transplant. I'm in the hospital for a month. This is back in 2001, because I went through months of chemotherapy. So we're back in 2001 now. And this is back then. You're like the girl in the bubble. No one could come in really to see you because your immune system's at 0. They're giving you tons more chemotherapy. They knew how important exercise was to me. So they were so sweet. They brought a bicycle for my room. They had another one outside the room. So early in the morning, I would set my alarm every day in the hospital, wake up at 4 a.m. so I could keep my life normal. I would sneak out of the room. They would let me with my mask on. I'd ride the bike, watch the sunrise over the mountain vistas. I was in Arizona. It was just such a memorable time for me.
Yes.
And my senses were just so heightened. So I remember looking out and seeing all the other patients so sick. And when I talk on this, I show a picture of kind of like a flower that's not as vibrant. And then I felt so vibrant. I had a picture of this colorful flower that's just exuberant. And that's how I felt. I didn't feel sick. I didn't let myself feel sick. Maybe I was, but I just felt so grateful to be given this chance to survive this cancer. And following my bone marrow transplant, they did 2 additional months of radiation therapy, and I was cured of my stage 4 cancer.
It's just amazing.
Yeah. In 2003, a few years later, my husband and I found out the miracle of growing our family. I was pregnant, which is amazing.
After they told you, like, we don't have time to protect fertility, you actually were able to naturally conceive this child and find out it's just amazing. Just amazing.
It was a miracle.
I want to pause there, because everyone listening is going to need a beat to just digest that piece of the story. And y'all, we're just getting started. We're like round 1. But that piece of the story of how old were you at diagnosis?
Yeah, I was 26.
26 in medical school. Your whole life is like picking up speed, and you get this what would typically be a crushing diagnosis, right? I think actually the way it was delivered to you by the on-call team is probably the typical way that news is communicated to people, right? It's like, it's time to shut everything down. You're really sick now. This is your life now. And something in you knew that wasn't how you were going to play that chapter. And my suspicion is that made all the difference. The belief, the unwavering belief under that, the attitude, the energy, y'all, if you were looking at her, we're going to have to publish parts of this video. It's like, you just glow. You're just exuding this glow. And that's the life force, right, is so strong. And I'm sure it was at 26. I'm sure that same kind of belief and energy was there back then.
You're right. I love your energy. I love what you're saying. People have asked, like, how is this? I was an exuberant child. I was like this before cancer, but that is what helped me kind of even go to a higher level. But I relate this to when my mom was pregnant. And I mean, this is a shout out to women in pregnancy. Our emotions matter, and they matter to our fetus. The emotional state is inherited. We know this from science. And so our thoughts matter. Our thoughts have a huge, as you said earlier, ripple effect.
Yes.
For the well-being of others, for the well-being of perhaps our child when they're in our bodies. And this is so very important. But my mom loved being pregnant. She was so excited. She said she remembers the day she was conceived, and she says it, and she still gets goosebumps. And I think that's why I am the way I am. So it's all, I'm just so blessed that my life was the way it was, and it prepared me for the journey I had.
Yes.
I don't know that you never compare your journey to someone else's. Because, oh my gosh, I see some of the most heart-wrenching stories, and people say, and think I'm an inspiration, but oh my gosh, I think I was given what I can handle. I see what other people have, and I don't know that I could have handled that, honestly,
And then you had this opportunity to pay that forward, like what you said at the very beginning, the 19-year-old with a cancer diagnosis who you're able to support now from the other side of that piece of your story. And that to me is something we talk about a lot within the Brilliant Balance coaching community. The people who are in two-way dialogue with me in coaching is that cycle of being able to learn and pay forward and learn and pay forward, because it's really the interconnectedness, right, that we feel with the rest of certainly women, but to some extent, all of humanity. Like we're at our best when we're teaching from the lessons that we've learned and then smoothing the path out for other people through them. Right. And you've made that your life's work, which we're going to get into a whole bunch here. So I don't want to miss this next part of the story because it would be so easy to tie it all up in a bow. And I'm sure you wish you could have at that point. But after you had your daughter, you had another medical setback, quite a serious one. What happened then?
Yeah, so it was interesting. A few weeks after Sophia was born, I started not to feel well again. And I would have swore the cancer was back. So I kind of ignored it because now my life was different, right? When I had cancer, it was just me. I could be selfish. Oh, I'm fine, whatever. I'm invincible. Now all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh. But it got to the point I couldn't even hold her. I couldn't bathe her. I couldn't do anything. I thought, this
is not right. Right.
So it got to be like red flag symptoms, and my family rushed me to the hospital. And I remember the doctor that was there was actually a family friend. It was a community hospital. And he looked more sick than I did. And my heart was beating at 8%. And I was in advanced heart failure. And I was again in cardiogenic shock. And so, from probably multiple things. Number one, the tumor was wrapped around my heart. So the radiation had to go right to my heart. So this isn't to say that chemo is going to cause what happened to me to other people or radiations. This was many, many years ago. We knew the toxicity was going to be high. We knew that I would have died without treatment. So they had to be aggressive. So the chemo saved my life. The radiation saved my life. Without it, I wouldn't have had to even have this second adversity is how I look at it. But yeah, so I was in cardiogenic shock, and this local team was, pretty dismal that you're going to need to transplant immediately. And that's when I went to Mayo Clinic. And, it was ironic because at that time I was actually a medical student at Mayo Clinic during my clinicals, and this stuff was happening. And so I had seen a doctor, Dr. Yip there, and he just filled my heart with hope and promise that you're going to be okay. We're going to start with medicines. When we can't do medicines, we're going to do procedures. And, you may or may not need a transplant someday, but let's just see. And I was tickled when he said, you need to do cardiac rehab. I'm like, I can do that.
You're like, that I can do.
I have a funny story though. I need to be careful by too many stories because I know we're limited on time, but I remember my first appointment, like Dawn wants to do it all and I don't want help. And here I have an ejection fraction. My heart's not beating, but I wanted my baby with me. And I wanted to go alone because I wanted some independence, right? So I took her with me to the appointment. I had no cash on me. And if the parking garage is the closest place to park, I'm like, what am I going to do? So I had to park far away, and she's in the stroller. And remember, I had to push her in the stroller to my cardiologist, my transplant appointment. I was like, oh my gosh, life is so hard, but yeah, I felt so blessed that she was with me. And I remember I got in that appointment. I was like, I couldn't even think. I couldn't breathe.
Right.
I was going to die.
Oh my gosh. That's just so illustrative of your energy though. I love that story.
It was terrible, but it was difficult. So fortunately the medicines helped. I did really well from 2003 until 2007. And then I started to not do as good again. I was in residency at the time. Like I pushed through. It was really exciting. I was a resident in my internship residency at Mayo Clinic. And come 2007, I had to take some time off. Like this is the first time I had to take time off because I was like, this isn't right. Signs and symptoms were turning in that direction. Thought they were going to have to do the transplant and list me soon. And then honestly, the hardest thing happened in my life in 2008, and my husband died unexpectedly. And that I really still to this day, a lot of people are like, you kind of talk over that. And I'm like, I think I talk over it because I don't even know yet how to explain it, but I will. I plan on writing a book, and I hope that that part of the book helps people, because I looked for a book. I wanted to know, do I wear my wedding ring? When do I stop wearing my wedding ring? What do I do for X, Y, and Z? What do I do when it's Father's Day for my daughter? I mean, there's just so much question I had on what do I do? And there is no handbook. No. You have to just listen to your heart and soul and grieve as is appropriate to you. No one else can explain that. But it was just so hard. And it really, I am very faithful, and I have a strong belief in God. Thank goodness, because that's what really got me through this time. And the belief in heaven and knowing my husband was okay. And, I just believe if we're awake to the transformative power of, like you said, again, loss, grief, suffering, pain, that we can get beyond just this hardship and really transcend this life of renewal. And that's where I feel like just this awakened life is an inspired life. And I had to be strong for my daughter. It took me about 9 months before I could really pick myself up. I was never depressed at all, but I was really flattened out. I couldn't have any stimulation. I could never let the radio go on in the car. I couldn't, she would watch TV. I'd have to have it turned down really low. It was really interesting how I was just so sensitive.
But like an exposed nerve just out there in the world. Yeah.
I just needed everything peaceful, and life came back. That's a whole nother story. I really leaned in heavily on my faith, and it got me through this very difficult time. And what was interesting is this was also the same time I was getting more sick with my heart failure, but it was like God stepped in, and that device that they put in my chest in 2007 started helping. My heart got stronger. I went back to work. I was in residency. I got strong enough to do a fellowship. I did a hospital fellowship, became a hospital physician at Mayo Clinic, which was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like one of the hardest jobs.
Yeah.
But I did great until about 2015. And the doctor was like, you're done. You need to kind of back off. And at the same time at Mayo Clinic, they had asked if I would be interested in kind of redesigning the breast clinic. I said, absolutely. And it's perfect timing, because now I get to do more of that integrative, holistic lifestyle medicine approach to care. Can I start that program and pilot it? So that's what I did. That was in 2015. It was a very successful program. And then in 2016, I actually had a sudden cardiac arrest with a 4-minute near-death experience. I was pulseless. I was at work. I did a presentation. So 2016 was a big,
Y'all, I mean, I just think the listeners are going to be like, I need to press pause for a second on this. It's like the hits just keep coming. So you went into cardiac arrest at work, 4 minutes flatline before they get everything back in order.
It was interesting. I actually was presenting to a group of executives at Mayo Clinic. And so there was about 30 people in the room. And I remember walking in, I remember not feeling well. And I remember I couldn't even open the door. Like I had the sign. I knew something wasn't right, but I was just like, what is going on? And you just keep going. And I remember I couldn't control the mouse, and the cursor on the screen started getting more and more pale. And that was my last conscious memory. But it was, I've had 3 amazing experiences. This morning when I did the presentation, I said only 2. I forgot my daughter. That's actually the most amazing when you deliver a baby. It's incredible, but that's a given. So any woman that's had a baby's had that. So my 2 experiences that other people probably haven't had in life, the second most profound experience was that near-death experience. And it gave me knowing that death is beautiful. And I just remember I was in this place of complete stillness and peace. And it was so beautiful. And I described it as I felt like the hands of God were holding me, and I just felt like my body was enveloped in love. I didn't see faces or voices or anything like that. It was just this state of existence that wasn't earthly, that's for sure, but yet I still had some awareness, I think. I'm not sure. But my internal defibrillator finally got me out of the rhythm after 4 minutes. It just wasn't working it was trying to work, but it was a flat line. And so it just wasn't shocking. So I was listed for heart transplantation several years later. I continued to have more and more complications. They did more procedures and more it just was really tough. I mean, I passed out once driving with my daughter. Life was scary. Although that sounds like a contradiction, because I said I was no longer.
It's beautiful and scary and a long wait. I mean, I think so. When someone gets on the transplant list, it's not like, boom, there we go. I mean, the TV version of it, right? If we've watched Grey's Anatomy or something, you can it's a while. But for you, how many years was it? Because we're leading up to that very important moment where you do make the top of the list.
Yeah, that's such an important question. And there's over 106,000 people on the heart transplant or on the organ donation list. And I mean, 17 people die a day waiting for an organ. And one donor saves 8 lives. I mean, these are remarkable statistics.
Yes.
So to answer your question, I waited 14 months. I waited my first year out of the hospital at home with the hope I would get a call. And I was getting more and more sick. And then in December of 2020, my numbers were getting to the point that they were like, this is when I was just passing out talking. I couldn't even talk at that point. They're like, Dawn, you need to come in the hospital. You are no longer safe at home. It's like, let me just stay home, with Sophia for Christmas. And so that's what I did. And then I was admitted to the hospital in January, and they gave me IV supportive therapy. I was not a candidate for a balloon pump to support my life or a ventricular assist device because of all the radiation, the previous surgeries. And I was getting actually more sick in the hospital. And then they couldn't even escalate the IV medications any further. So, I mean, if I continued to get more sick, it was going to be moving to ECMO and like full life support. And it's just crazy how life is, And so I remember on this particular day, it was February 4th, my daughter came to visit me to have dinner. It was during COVID, so we were very limited and they didn't like her coming up, but they were understanding. She was a senior in high school. So she came to have dinner with me and I was still able to walk as long as I had the medicines with me. So I walked her to the elevator to say goodnight to her. And that's like so sad. It's like so hard as a mom. Like here she's going home. Oh, I can't explain it. And then you just don't know. You don't know if you could die that night. She was, you just don't know.
Right.
It's like every minute you just hold on to, it's like that preciousness of life. And so my cardiologist, Dr. Patel, was at the nurse's station. I thought, oh my gosh, someone's getting their heart. That's so cool. And he said, Dawn, can I talk to you? And I remember I was like, oh, and it made me almost sick. I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if you can talk.
I don't know if you can talk to me.
I waited 18 years, but I'm not ready tonight. No. And so I remember we were walking back to my room and it's one of those awkward, it's like a first date. She actually before me and behind me on my hips. I remember she say something. I felt awkward. I felt so weird. And I crawled in my bed like a little girl and he sat at the head of the bed. And these are my friends. These are my colleagues. Right? So it's like, it was hard for them too. This whole time was so hard for them.
Yes.
And he's like, we have a donor. And you would think in that moment you would be elated. But I wasn't. I was so sad. I'm like, someone else has to die for me to live. And now my heart that has all the memories of my husband who died, my daughter, my beautiful childhood is going to be removed. And what if that has a memory? So it was so difficult. And then the doctor went on to say, Dawn, I have something else to share with you. The donor is the IV drug user with hepatitis C. Wow. So I was like, ooh, now we have a big problem.
That was not planned.
Colleague is a psychiatrist who came to see me a few years earlier. He's like, are you sure you even want to do a transplant? I'm like, he's a psychiatrist. I'm like, no, don't want to have a heart transplant. But what's your point? And he's like, because personalities change. And so that was our words are so powerful as doctors, right? As a doctor, you can crush someone's soul. You can really
absolutely
influence decisions in a complicated way. And so anyways, that really was in my head heavy. And so when when Dr. Patel said we have a heart, but it's IV drug user, I thought, oh my God, what if my personality changes? What does this mean? I was passing such strong judgment though, rather than really pivoting that to, wait a minute, this is kind of interesting. I should do drugs. I mean,
right.
And she was wanting to be an organ donor. This is actually a beautiful thing. So I took a few hours to process it. And with due time, I was like, wait a minute, this is meant for me. This is like the most amazing gift and opportunity I can give this heart that was willing to give me life, the most beautiful life on earth, possibly. Because I just think my life is so perfect. And so I knew it was the right heart for me. And the next morning I went down for my transplant. Every other surgery I've had before, terrified, like anyone, you're always like making the sign of the cross. Like,
sure.
Here I'm like moments away from my heart being removed. I had no fear.
Wow.
I wasn't scared. I was so ready and so excited. I remember as I went under anesthesia praying for the donor and the donor family. In all other surgeries, I would always pray for me. I would always be like, oh my God, please let me wake up. But this had nothing to do with me. This had to do with her and her family. And it was just really amazing. And I just remember having eye contact with my surgeon, Dr. Sariapoglu, and he just had this look in his eye like, Dawn, you're going to be fine. We got this. And it was that look that I was like, that was so settling to my heart and soul. And a few days later, I woke up and that was the most amazing experience in my life. And I mean, it fills my whole body with chills to say it. I mean, I woke up a few days after transplant, because there were multiple complications after my transplant, I actually had to go back to the operating room and be reopened because I was having a hemorrhage. It's such a hard surgery after that radiation. It's so hard to reconnect. So when I did wake up from transplant, I was extubated. My whole body was beating against the bed. And I was like, ooh, what's this?
What is this?
And my body was warm feeling for the first time. And this is funny. I said this during another podcast and some comment from a woman saying, mine's warm all the time. I just was like, that's so funny. But it was for 18 years. I always felt
You were
so
cold. Yeah.
There was this harmonious sound. And it was my hair brushing against the crisp white linen sheets. And it was my hair making this harmonious sound to the powerful beat of my new heart.
That's amazing.
As if every cell in my body was oscillating this higher frequency. And it was just like, I was alive.
Yes.
So cool. And I haven't lost that. After cancer, I kind of like got back to normal life. You're kind of like, whoa, I'm going to complain. I'm going to, blah, blah. But after transplant, And this is just me. I'm one person with a transplant. Every single transplant patient is like this. It's so cool. I mean, when you're given that second chance of life, there's something magical that happens. And it just transforms this permanence of death from one individual into vital existence into another. And there is such sacred power in that exchange. So if you're not an organ donor, this is a huge shout out. Consider it, because why do you want that heart underground? You want it in another human being that can
be
my life, impacting hundreds of thousands of lives in my career. It impacted my daughter's life if I would have died, and she's going to impact more lives. And then this is a pebble in the pond, ripple effect. So organ donation is so important.
I mean, we're going to link to resources on organ donation so that if someone feels moved by this experience, and someone will, I have no doubt you've never delivered a talk that someone's not moved to say, you know what, I'm going to take care of that detail. We'll link to the resource on how to get yourself on the list. It's a really easy process, not hard to do. Your energy is so contagious, right? And I didn't know you before your transplant, but it is so abundant and just flowing out of you. It's rare to see that in someone, right? I'm sure we all can name somebody in our life who's just like kind of in love with life, but it just comes out of your pores. And I wonder about the correlation between your chosen field of practice these days, which is lifestyle medicine, and that energy, because it feels like there could be kind of a positive snowball effect here of the zest for life, but then fed by a series of practices that help to kind of amplify and sustain it. So I want to give you a chance to talk about that work, specifically lifestyle medicine, the work you do at the Mayo Clinic. And I think that a lot of the women in this audience would benefit from just an understanding of the principles, like the pillars, as well as maybe even some thoughts on sequencing. Like if we want this same zest for life that we see in you, what are some of the things that people can do?
Well, first, Shirley, your energy is contagious, and you're just a beautiful person with all you do. So I love this talk, and you're just so authentic and genuine, and that's so special. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
But lifestyle medicine is a fascinating specialty, and it should be at the core of every single specialty, quite honestly. And so lifestyle medicine is a medical specialty with board certified physicians that use therapeutic lifestyle interventions to prevent, treat, and reverse the most common chronic diseases. So it's everything you can think of: cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, cancer, autoimmune disease. I mean, this list goes on, but that's powerful. Prevention. Let's prevent the disease to happen in the first place. If you have it, okay, let's treat it. And it can even reverse some diseases. So things like early prostate cancer, cardiovascular disease. We think maybe even Alzheimer's dementia. Dean Ornish is doing some great work in that space. I'm working at doing, these research studies are very hard to fund because, pharmaceutical companies not going to make money if you're promoting lifestyle or whole food plant-based nutrition, but more and more research is coming out. So you asked an important question about the pillars of lifestyle medicine. And the number one thing that patients come in to see me about is the plant-based nutrition. That's what a lot of people are excited about. There's a lot of myths, a lot of confusion, a lot of controversy. You read one study, that comes out, in the New York Times, and the next day it's another study. And you just don't know what to do. It is confusing.
It is confusing.
It's a lot, but basically keep it simple. It's really a common sense approach to things, right? So the whole food part of it is what matters most. Don't eat processed food. There's over 10,000 chemicals in the American diet that have no business being there. And we know that ultra-processed food contributes to premature death. from all causes. So, I mean, that pretty much is it in a nutshell. It's terrifying to know the percentage of ultra-processed foods in our diet and our kids. Our diet is over 60% ultra-processed foods, and the estimates for kids is about 67% in our youth. There are studies that show for kids that ultra-processed food, it actually limits their coordination when they're young. And as they get into adolescent years, it starts to interfere with their ability to have cardiovascular fitness. It's just terrifying. And like I said, I had a 19-year-old this week with breast cancer. You know, and I can't help it. But when I see what people eat, it's really terrifying. Sometimes I wonder, because they all provide for me a 24-hour food survey. I wonder, is someone watching me to see what my reaction is going to be, to see how I can connect with my patients and not like freak out. Eating such bad food. I'm like, is this possible?
Because the knowledge gap, Dawn, between what you know as, you know, an evidence-based practitioner who can look at like all of the data and has read all the studies, and the average consumer who has not availed themselves of that data, right? Because they're busy learning about other things, that knowledge gap creates they actually don't know that they're doing damage. That would be my supposition versus like, I'm willfully going to do this. I think there's just a big knowledge gap.
Yeah, there is nothing willful. No one is intentionally hurting themselves. They just don't know the harms that are involved. And then a lot of it, they think that they're weak and they think it's willpower and it's addiction. The manufacturers know that these chemicals in the ultra-processed foods, they hack the brain. Mm-hmm. And so there is an actual dependency on the body to have that dopamine release or the hyperpalatability of food. So it takes some time to get yourself off that ultra-processed food so your sweet little tongue can appreciate and savor natural food again. Yeah. Now, this is why I'm actually very selfish and I like to work with cancer patients, because I don't have to wait that 6 weeks or the estimates are even 3 months it can take to reverse that.
They lose all that immediately.
They have a huge why. You know, if your why is big enough, it's okay. I'm ready to change today. And so I really try to grab the patients as soon as you're diagnosed and start to work in this space because they want it and it helps them to have empowerment and to have some autonomy over their disease. Hire the right doctor. Let the doctor take care of your cancer and chemotherapy and radiation, immunotherapy, whatever it is. And you take care of healthy living. You know, it's not just about the nutrition though. So if I meet a woman and when we kind of start talking about nutrition, I sense that she has a lot of stress about this. I move right to the spirituality part. But I guess what I should probably do is to answer what those pillars are.
Yeah, let's hit them so people can have a frame of reference.
So whole food, plant-based nutrition with the emphasis on whole food, knowing some of what I just told you, because that's an important shout out. Movement. I mean, you know, you can't eat a perfect diet and sit around all day. You've got to move your body. And I don't say physical exercise because that can be really not too appealing to some people. Movement. Just move your body. I have some women that go and exercise an hour in the gym and they sit the rest of the day. That's not acceptable. Move, move, move. Do something you enjoy. Very important. We all have stress. You cannot get rid of stress, but how we manage it matters. And I hope that my story can help to kind of, you know, inspire and encourage people ways that we can help to take that stress and kind of ride the wave, you know, and there's healthy ways to manage stress. And exercise is one of them, right? Mm-hmm. Avoidance of risky substances is a huge shout out. You know, no one smokes cigarettes nowadays. Everyone knows that's bad. I bet there's not one caller on here that smokes cigarettes, but everyone drinks alcohol. And alcohol is just as bad. So I don't know why alcohol, I don't know why women insist on wearing these. Or I don't think women really wear them that much, but they're at the stores. It's like wine time, or is it wine hour, or wine on Friday? I'm like, no. Don't pick up your kids with those shirts either. But the alcohol, it's a carcinogen. So if I tell someone they can have a glass of wine with dinner, it's just like if I said they can have a cigarette with dinner. You know, it is a dose-dependent response. So the more alcohol you drink, the more risk you get, but there is no health benefit. And we used to think that there was a health benefit for the heart. But
that glass of red wine kind of story. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The World Heart Federation said no health benefit.
Sadly, we've taken that away from ourselves. Yeah, that was.
You know, obesity is an epidemic. Overweight is an epidemic, and the calories in alcohol is 7, per gram, and it's too many calories. And people are trying to lose weight, and alcohol is a big contributor. But what about mental illness? It's a depressant, and so. You know, I'm not saying no alcohol. Do I enjoy a glass of champagne once in a while? Absolutely, I do. But it shouldn't be something we do every day. It should not be something we do in isolation ever. And so I tell my patients, I never want you drinking it alone, ever. And I'm very firm with that. And I actually don't want you doing it every day, ever. So maybe 2 to 3 glasses of wine a week, and that's 5 ounces. Or if you want a beer or a mixed drink, there's no healthier option. And so some people say, well, what would be the healthiest? Isn't one. We're not doing this for health benefits, so do whatever you enjoy.
Right.
But let's limit it, and then I would throw into risky substances, ultra processed food.
Yeah.
You need to sleep. Sleep is critical. So I have people doing everything right. They're perfect, but they don't sleep. They say they don't sleep. That's crazy. I'm actually not too good with sleep. But sleep is something we all need. 7 to 9 hours of sleep. The most important I saved for last. The most important, honestly, is social connections, relationships. So our horizontal, like this sharing of love horizontally is so important. Loneliness is such a predictor of death. But going back to social connections, we have horizontal, but we have vertical. And that's my favorite thing to talk about. And the vertical is basically our spirituality. And, if you could think of a person who's more spiritual than you, go ahead and do it. And think of a person that's less spiritual than you. And I'm going to tell you, wrong on both accounts. We're all 100% spiritual. We're all for the spiritual core. And there's science that actually shows that 29% of our spirituality is inherited from our parents. And then 71% is environmental. So that's not that much, right? I mean, some of it is inherited, but 71% is up to us. So we go to the gym, work on our core. And so you need to work on that spiritual core. And I love Lisa Miller's work out of Columbia. She wrote my favorite book called The Awakened Brain. I so recommend you listen to it. But when it comes to spirituality, it's very, very important. And we cannot navigate through adversity if we're so focused on us. And the definition of spirituality for me, I believe, is believing in something bigger than us. And for me, that's God. But for you, it's whatever it is. This life on earth isn't just truly about us. And if we're so focused inward on that, you're going to crumble. You're going to be miserable anytime stress comes your way. So that to me is the most important pillar. And I believe if you have well-developed spirituality, that helps to develop your why. You want to live healthy. And then it's easy to eat healthy. You're excited about it.
Well, you feel better. I think there's a virtuous cycle that gets kicked off. I believe these pillars with my whole heart. I mean, they're at the foundation of the practices that I am teaching and encouraging, and all, the women in this community are adopting. And where I always shake out is like, I don't want people to go into a shame spiral if they're not all the way there. It's, if 100% of someone's diet is highly processed, ultra processed food, can you make it 98%? Can you move it to 90? Can you move it to 70? Like there's this incrementalism of change with a commitment of like, I'm going to move somewhere from my baseline. If I don't move at all, what does that look like? If I'm already running 10Ks, what's next? Like, right. And you're not putting people into a shame spiral, but I know we can tend to have a very self-critical nature among highly perfectionistic, overachieving, ambitious women who listen to the show. And they're going to, potentially walk away going, oh my God, look at all the things I'm doing wrong. So can you put a finer point on that for like, how do we move the needle in a way that can build some momentum over time?
Yeah. And I think you're talking specific about more the nutrition exercise part of this.
Yes.
Yeah. So with the nutrition part of it,
and even sleep. I mean, I think all of,
Mm-hmm. So I think the first thing though is to ask, why is this important to us? What are the reasons we want to live healthier? Because that why really does have to be addressed.
Yes.
And the reason why is it to fit in the pair of jeans you wore in high school? That's probably not going to be a really motivating force. That's going to drive a person to Ozempic. That's not going to really drive a person.
Right.
You want to feel vital and raise that vital energy. And for me, whole food plant-based nutrition is much deeper than just the health benefit. There's an ethical component with animal love. And then there's also the environmental, the carbon footprint element. So it's pretty deep what that nutrition can do. But I believe with nutrition, we start small. We start maybe with breakfast, and that's the easy thing to fix. So I always fix breakfast for my patients, and I want them to eat breakfast. I'm not a fan of people fasting through breakfast, which is a big fad. And I want people to try to eat no later than 10 to 11 o'clock in the morning. I really don't want anything ultra processed at breakfast time. It's so easy and inexpensive to do oatmeal. If you don't like oatmeal, do a piece of sprouted bread with some avocado on it, some chickpeas. I myself am whole food plant only. I don't do animal products, but I'm actually okay if some of my patients want to do, omega-3 rich eggs or organic eggs, particularly egg whites. I try to, limit egg yolks to about 3 per week for my patients. But the problem with egg research is how are people cooking it and what on earth are they eating with their eggs? Most people are frying it in butter or it's with cheese and an omelet, and they're having it with white bread that has more butter on it. And so eggs are just bacon. Most people have it with bacon, right?
It's like a gateway, right?
Yeah. So I kind of talk through what they can eat for breakfast, and we kind of handle that. And then we move on to lunch. And I say, most people at lunch, if they're having meat, they're having lunch meat. And that's an ultra processed food, which is a carcinogen. Ultra processed meat, all that lunch meat that they try to, sell you that sounds healthier and you're paying a ton of money for, it's actually a carcinogen. And I don't try to fear people, because I don't think that's a great way to go, but yet it is the truth. And I see too much cancer to shy away from these conversations. I guess that's why
when you're a stage 4 cancer survivor, you can't help but pay attention. It's a pulpit. You have to talk about this. Like, you can't hide from the data, right?
Yeah, I see suffering in young women and older women, that these cancers are preventable. We know that probably 40% of cancers are definitely preventable. And that number is probably much, much higher, like upwards near 75% preventable. There's some estimates. We will continue to see these numbers going up and up if we just lived healthier. So I have to be a strong advocate. And if I'm a strong advocate, maybe really in that other direction, people get it 50% right. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to lunch, that's where everyone's getting their processed meat, quick lunches, ultra processed food, lunch meat. And that's a great cheap place to put beans. And, so I really try to get folks not to necessarily do salads, but if they're going to do a grain bowl, do some lentils in it, or do some tofu, or do some edamame. And I'm sure a lot of listeners are like, but isn't she a breast cancer doctor?
Right. Tofu. I heard. Right? Yep.
That's the biggest myth in the world. And anytime I get the chance to talk about nutrition, I say soy is fine. All of my breast cancer survivors, I want them having soy. We know from the American Cancer Society, they did a beautiful meta-analysis, which means they reviewed all the highest quality data to date last year. And what that particular meta-analysis showed, that in breast cancer survivors, there was a 25% reduced risk of breast cancer coming back in those survivors who had more soy versus those that didn't. That was most profound with those with an estrogen receptor negative breast cancer, but the benefit was still there with estrogen receptor positive cancers. So soy is safe. It's a great plant-based protein, super inexpensive. Make sure it's not genetically modified. It doesn't have to be organic, but just make sure it's non-GMO. And it's such an inexpensive, tasty way. The soy is great for hot flashes. So there's a ton of middle-aged women listening.
Good to know, right?
A substantial study done by Neil Barnard, not a huge study, it was repeated 2 years in a row, that showed that a half a cup of edamame a day with a plant-based diet reduced hot flashes by 88%, improved libido, which you'd love. It improved mood, and there was an 8-pound weight loss over 12 weeks. So,
okay, I think you could just frame that last little sentence and probably be a billionaire. Like, just, go start an edamame company, and I think you're sold.
Farm, okay, we'll just sell them. But I really do, and I see that my women, especially, I have a lot. 75% of breast cancers are hormone receptor positive, so they have to go on anti-estrogen therapy, which causes a lot of hot flashes. And so I really lean in on these healthy ways of eating. Number one, using the soy 1 to 3 times a day. And the women do great on it. So shout out to soy. It's safe.
No kidding.
It prevents breast cancer. And God forbid you ever get breast cancer. If you had soy before breast cancer, you get it. It shows that it improves survival after. So soy is great. No problem with soy. So point is lunch, I try to get folks to replace that meat with more plant-based options. And my patients are excited about that. They're so excited, like, sure, let's try it.
Well, what's so fascinating, and I think we could go on all day with like very pragmatic tips. And I think just those 2 things, if people just walked away saying, look, I can do a little research on these 6 pillars. What can I do on my own around sleep? What can I do around physical activity? What can I do around avoidance of some of these risky substances? Like, can I decrease or eliminate, right? Those things. How can I increase my social connections? That feels like low hanging fruit. And then in terms of plant-based nutrition, you've given us 2 really practical starting points for breakfast and lunch that are like, if you just rewired those 2 meals, you're off to the races, right? And then you build from there. So, I've been saying this a lot to our clients lately, that I think a lot of people are being kind of given a diagnosis, even if it's not an official diet. Like, this is not going so well for you, right? You don't feel very good. A lot of things are kind of breaking down, but they're not getting clear guidance on then what. And so I'm so grateful for the really pragmatic advice of like, try this, put them in this order, and then get yourself in community where you have some support for other people trying to make similar changes so that you're not trying to do everything on your own, right? Which just helps reinforce that social connection.
And this doesn't have to be perfect. It absolutely does not have to be perfect. And bottom line, it comes down to those ultra processed foods. Just try it. You can do some eggs. You can do some, yogurt. I think yogurt's fine, but try to make it fat free. Try to make the animal protein smaller portions. I mean, in America, we do these huge serving sizes. Do 4 ounces.
Just
we don't need
move
all
the
those
needle.
extra calories.
Yeah.
We have a protein excess in this country. We do not have a protein deficiency. We have a fiber deficiency. So I think that's really one of the biggest things is drive that fiber. It helps to kick out excess estrogen, helps to kick out extra cholesterol. It helps us burn calories when we eat, which is great. We're all trying to watch our girlish figures. And it's great for that gut microbiome, the organisms in our GI tract from mouth all the way down to the very bottom. I used to say on a girl sort of podcast. But bottom line is everyone goes and spends jillions of dollars on probiotics. And I'm here to say, do that whole food plant predominant diet.
Eat some fiber.
Get rid of those processed foods and get fiber, including beans, which are so good for you and cheap. It's not an expensive diet. There was just a study that showed that the average whole food plant-based person saves $500 a year compared to the normal American diet. So it's not expensive.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, I know that people will leave inspired. We are going to connect them to where they can find your work and lifestyle medicine at the Mayo Clinic. I'm assuming there's research that they can kind of go pull data, simple tip sheets that they can download. Is there a particular website you want us to send people to?
Yeah, Mayo Clinic always. It's a great site to follow on Instagram or any social media. I'm also on the advisory committee for Centers for Nutrition Studies. They have some wonderful support. I'll give a shout out to the recipes. I share all the recipes with my patients. There's a few great celebrity chefs out there that are just wonderful. Brittany Girotti is amazing. Another one I like is Epic Mint Leaves. He's super fun and he has some of the coolest recipes. And ladies, and just maybe gentlemen on it too, but I think it's a very female forward crowd, which I love. My patients are tickled when we watch the videos together. In my visits, I pull up some of his videos. So you've got to check out Epic Mint Leaves. I'm on Instagram too, but I get busy. And so I try to, I don't have a TV because I don't have time for it. I'd rather do all these other more meaningful things. I try to post some cool recipes on my stories on Instagram, but when I get busy, if I'm not sleeping enough, I shut down social media. Commit to my own plan.
Good plan. Well, I will link as many of those things as possible in the show notes so people can click straight through. And I just want to say thank you again for being with us today. You are such an inspiration. And I know that you do it from such a pure place of generously wanting to pay forward, like the gifts that have come to you, but also just practical information and guidance that people can really apply to feel if we can have half the energy that you're exuding, I think that's like inspo enough for this crew. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. This was so wonderful. I always like to tell people go after those awe-inspired moments. And each time I get to do these, I always feel really good. But this one was really special. I got bunches of goosebumps talking. So thank you. I don't know if bunches is the word, but that didn't sound quite right. But I had a lot of goosebumps. So thanks.
That's awesome. So what did I tell you? I warned you at the beginning that this one was extraordinary, and I am confident that you join me in that belief after having listened to the end of the episode. I sat there at the end of this conversation just thinking, wow, there's so much inspiration and information buried in this. And we just scratched the surface of this arena of lifestyle medicine that Dr. Mussallem, Dawn, as she was kind enough to let me call her, practices these days. So I would encourage you to check out the resources that we've linked to in the show notes. There are resources linked there from the Mayo Clinic directly, and then also from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. So places that you can go to get a little bit more if this has whet your appetite in terms of those sort of divinely designed principles that if we live our lives by can keep us in a state of wellness and vibrancy that I think so many of us aspire to, particularly the listeners of the show. So thank you for tuning in today from the bottom of my heart. I hope you got something really helpful out of my conversation here today. And if you're new to the Brilliant Balance Show and just discovering this place through Dawn, thank you for being here. It's wonderful to have you. I hope you'll subscribe to the show and continue to listen and find ideas and inspiration from other guests as well. That is all for today, my friends. Until next time, let's be brilliant.